How's it going, Blamers? And welcome back to Blame It on Mel. Today's guest was raised Mormon in Idaho in a family of 8 kids. Every single one served missions, went to BYU or Rick's College, and they got married in the temple. She had scripture study at 6 a.m. with 0 caffeine. Apostles were sleeping in her guest room, and she thought that RC Cola was basically a gateway drug. But here's where it gets wild. She went on to become a TV news reporter, an Amazon best-selling author, appeared in national commercials, had a role in Superman. She went on Oprah, and she helped change a law that now exists in all 50 states. And that same law later helped her become a mother. Her name is Suzanne, and her life proves that obedience doesn't always equal destiny. Welcome to the show, Suzanne.
Thank you. Great to be on.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so excited to meet you. I am a huge fan. I've been following you on social media, and I was just so excited to finally, I saw you in my comments, and something had me click on you in the comments. I don't know what it was, but it just kind of I felt really drawn to you. And so then I started reading about your story and messaging you, and your story is one I've never heard of. And also something that everyone's going to claim isn't true. And I've seen,
and they have people
and
have
I've seen people in your comments as you're sharing part of your story that they don't believe you. They call you a liar.
Yeah. They say, this is not the way the Mormon church is. This is not, why are you lying? Why are you making up something? Is there drama? I'm like, no, this is what really happened to me while I was a Mormon. Yes.
And why would you?
Yeah. I'm so happy with my simple little life of just living here in Florida and being a beach girl. I don't need any attention, but I'm happy to talk on your show because I've truly never told my story. I've never said this. And even when I shared with my mom what happened, she was like, I had no idea. My family didn't even know that this is part of the story. So we've given the big tease.
Yes, exactly. I know. No. So before we get too far into it, let's talk about on a scale from a thimble of RC Cola to a fishbowl of margarita. How rebellious were you growing up as a Mormon?
Oh, I was so afraid to do anything. So the thimble, that's the whole story. I was so into being Mormon as a young girl, and getting baptized at 8 and all the things. I was raised in your typical Mormon family, and I'm so glad I had a great childhood. I didn't know any better, but things are great. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was in all the leadership positions you could think of. Great parents, great family. But yeah, the RC Cola thing, I was spending the night at my friend's house. We were probably in 2nd or 3rd grade, and she wanted to have an RC Cola. And she was Mormon too, but her dad really wasn't active, and the mom was. And she said, let's have some. And I knew RC Cola was a drink we didn't have in our house. We would maybe drink Sprite, and that was it. No caffeine. And
no caffeine at all. Some will drink caffeine.
Yeah, we were hardcore. No caffeine.
So your friend, was she Mormon?
She was Mormon. We would go to church every Sunday, and she said, let's have some RC Cola. I was having a slumber party at her house, and I was like, oh, I can't drink that. And she's like, yeah, you can. I said, well, go ask your mom if I can. And her mom was asleep on the couch, and I had her wake up her mom to find out if I could have some. And I said, okay, but I only want as much as a thimble. I only wanted just the tiniest little sip. And I still was worried that it was as bad as beer or something like that. I was just terrified.
My husband also grew up that way, and a lot of Mormons are like that. And I remember even being an adult and married and having kids of my own, and I was not really allowed to drink any sort of Diet Coke or anything with caffeine at my in-laws' house. I remember even putting some in the fridge, because I always needed something around 3 p.m. just to kind of kickstart, that energy from having so many kids. And it was always hey, whose is this? It was not.
I could never bring that into my house. No. So my dad, about 10 years ago, I came home to visit, and he was so proud. He's like, there's something in the refrigerator for you. I was like, okay. And he opens the refrigerator, and there was a Pepsi in there. And I don't drink just regular Pepsi. If I was going to have something, it'd be a Diet Coke. But it was almost like he was showing me a beer, but he was allowing it in the house. My family to this day still does not have caffeine in the house. They do not. But I was like, wow, Dad, Thanks. So
Really neat that he did that for you,
it
though.
was. It was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wild. So you grew up with 8 kids.
Yes. And we had the Indian placement students. Do you remember that program? They would
Oh,
come from the
wait,
Dakotas
fun.
and they would live with you for a school year. So we had several Indian placement students. Yeah, big family. We had foster kids in and out of the house. But yeah, just lovely big family. And 5 boys, 3 girls.
And everybody went to a church school.
Yes, all of us. It was not a question. It really wasn't. We all were expected to go to BYU or Rick's College, which is now BYU Idaho. And all of us were not expected to go on missions. The girls, we all did. And then it was no question. We all were to get married in the temple, which we all did.
So did you feel like you were told that you had to go to a church school, or how do you feel like it was just expected? Like, it wasn't necessarily forced, or was it forced? Or how do you feel like that control worked?
I think they wanted us to stay within the bubble of the church and the protection of the church. And man, are you controlled at Rick's College? We were so controlled. But I was accepted to the University of Idaho, and that's where my parents met, was in Moscow, Idaho.
My kids go to school there. I have two kids that go to school there. Yeah.
My dad was student body president, I think in the early 60s or something. And, he was like the big man on campus, and my mom saw him. She's like, I want to marry him someday. And then she was a new convert to the church. My dad was raised Mormon. But yeah, they got married while they were up there at U of I.
There is a huge institution. It's actually pretty big at U of I.
Oh, good. See, but I think my parents still thought it was a party school. So when I was accepted there, and I was accepted to a school in Cedar City, but then I was reading my journal a few weeks ago, and it said, my parents want me to go to a dumb Mormon school. I have no choice in the matter, kind of thing. So I couldn't go to those schools. So I applied at Rick's College and went to Rick's.
So you really felt like you didn't have a choice?
Yep. I don't think so. My parents were very concerned about us ever sinning or doing anything wrong. They really wanted to make sure that, especially in our small town of Pocatello, Idaho, 50,000 people, they wanted to make sure that we did not ever bring shame upon the family.
So there really wasn't a lot of individual choice. It was more just like pressure from living within the church.
And you go to church every Sunday. There was no question. You dressed modestly. There was no question. One time in junior high, because I had my own car in high school, but junior high, I wanted to wear a jean skirt. And so I had to sneak it in my bag, and then on the way to school, hide behind a bush and put on the jean skirt so I could show up at school with the jean skirt on. I could never.
Was it shorter than your knees?
Yeah, it was above my knees. Yeah. Ooh, that was scandalous. And then I would have to change before I walked into the house as well. So my mom, if she saw me in a jean skirt, that would have been a problem.
Yeah, no, I'm aware. I remember a lot of Mormon girls doing the same thing. Like, they would even do it mutual, and they would leave the house and then they would wear something different to mutual. And then the mom would say, well, you need to tell her to wear a t-shirt. Like we always had to keep t-shirts in the closet. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. That's your kid. I'm not telling her that she can't wear that.
Modesty, it's so sad, the modesty, because as soon as I stopped being Mormon, I felt sexier than I ever had, because not that it's like I'm showing off too much, but the layers of clothes that they make you wear and hiding our beautiful bodies, so it's a sad thing to still feel. I still have moments where I'm kind of like, oh, am I showing too much? I'm showing my stomach. I still have issues sometimes.
So you also mentioned that you had apostles that were staying at your house. How did that come about?
So when a long time ago, growing up, what would that be? 30, 40 years ago, I'm 54. So growing up, my father was the stake president for many years. And I don't know how the church works anymore. When you have an apostle or a general authority come and speak to a stake conference, they would have the general authority would always stay in our home. So we would have dinner with them before they would go to the meetings. And then in the morning, we would all have breakfast with the apostle, and then they would go back to Salt Lake or to their next assignment. So it was always really special to have. I can't think of all the people. I just remember Boyd K. Packer for sure. And you name them, and they most likely would have stayed at our home, which is pretty cool.
That is really cool. So did you notice anything different about them? Like, did they also not drink caffeine, or just different things?
Yeah. All we had was water, maybe juice. I don't even think we brought out any kind of soda when they came, but it was always special to have someone at the time thinking that they were, chosen by God and that they were, one of the most important people on earth at the time. So it was to us like, a very special thing to have them in our home.
Were you expected to act differently, or did you notice if your parents had a different demeanor when they were in your home?
We always were so well behaved. Our family was very, I hate to say the word controlled in that way, but we knew how to behave when you have guests in the home, so it wasn't like we were rambunctious or anything. We just knew, almost your church behavior, act like you're in church, just be quiet, and we would all kneel around the table and have, evening prayer with an apostle or a general authority. So we all knew what to do. And we were not going to have any attitude when somebody was at our house.
So did you guys do all the normal things? You had scripture study at 6 a.m.
Yes. Yeah.
And
never skipped. Yep.
Food storage.
Oh, so much food storage. And we canned food, and we would go to the church in Idaho. They had, and probably in Utah and other states, the cannery where you would go and help chop the potatoes and make the stew. And then you would be able to bring some of the food home. But yeah, food storage for sure. That was a big part of our family.
And what about fasting?
Every first Sunday of the month, we would fast, all of us, starting Saturday night. And then we'd come home after church and have the big roast, but yeah, we fasted.
There was a roast. Why? I know that's all we had all the time was a roast also. Why is that?
Potatoes, celery, carrots. Yeah. Oh, it was always so good. You'd walk in the house and it smelled so good.
Yeah, it smelled like that. I felt like it was like everybody had a roast on Sunday. Yeah. I guess it was just something that was easy because you just put it in the slow cooker and then it can cook while you're at church, right?
Yep.
What about paying tithing?
I learned to pay tithing starting at age 8, probably even when I was younger, but I remember filling out the envelope and putting my quarter or any babysitting money that I made my entire life, paying tithing.
And then same thing, like your fast offering, you did the same thing, right?
Yeah, they would always come to the house. The two guys would show up at the door and we'd give them the money. Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, it's all about blessings in heaven, right? You have to do all the things, and it's about doing, you have to check off the list of all the many, many things that you have to do to get the points and if you want to go to heaven, you got to do all the stuff.
How you felt it was basically like a checklist?
Yes, very much. Yeah.
It wasn't like you automatically get your ticket to heaven. You have to earn it.
You do. Yeah. And you can earn extra points by going on a mission and helping people get baptized, or extra points by making sure you get married in the temple. Like, you can't go to the highest level of heaven, according to the Mormons, if you don't do all those things. Get your temple endowments and marry somebody also temple worthy that can take you to the temple. So.
Yeah. So I recently, so my daughter, she has started going to just a Christian church up in college. And she goes with some of the boy basketball players, some of the girl basketball players, they just kind of go together. And one of the boy basketball players, he's extremely, extremely Christian. And even when he came over to visit, he walked in with the Bible. And so I was asking him about it, and I was asking him what the difference was with being Christian versus being Mormon. And he said the biggest difference is that they believe that everybody is already going to be able to go to heaven.
Yeah. It's not about, what do they say? It's not about works.
Yeah.
But we always would say faith without works is dead.
Yeah. It's not like a process. He's like, of course, God wants all of his kids to return back to him. And that kind of resonated to me a little bit, because I was like, well, yeah, because like I'm a parent. And so I cannot imagine telling my kids that they have to do all of these certain things in order for me to love them or for me to accept them to come back home. I just can't imagine giving my kid a list and saying, these are all the things that you have to do. And if you don't do them, then you're not going to be able to come back home and live with me.
And one thing about, so I have a sister, she passed away about 10 years ago, but she was my closest best friend. Even after I left the church, she confided in me one time. She said, Susie, I do everything I'm supposed to do She says, church callings, everything. I went on a mission, married in the temple. I'm doing everything the church is asking me to do. She says, and I do go to the temple, but I don't maybe go as much as I should. Is that the only reason why maybe I'm not as happy as I should be? Because the church teaches that you'll be so happy if you do everything the church tells you to do. And she's like, I'm happy, but I'm not feeling like I'm as happy as the church promises. And that always made me sad for her, that she just felt like she's doing everything. And so she should feel better. And I was like, man, you'd just be happier if you just weren't Mormon with all that pressure.
Well, do you think that it's also just extremely confusing trying to figure out how, like, what is the difference between being deeply loved and being controlled? Like, could that maybe be what like contributed to those mixed feelings?
Yeah. Well, and with me leaving my family, my family and I really lost our relationship for a good 10 years because I had walked away from the church, and I was my mom even said, she's like, the devil's got you. And she would call and text me and tell me that I need to come back to the church and send me, messages and emails and just push. And I just finally had to say, I've got to walk away. This is too much pressure. Leave me alone. I've become Lutheran now. I love God more than I've ever loved God. He's not a scary God to me anymore, but she just really thought the devil got me. And I was not under my family's control or the church's control of how to live anymore. And I was happier. Not that it's not about being happy because you want to sin. It's just realizing that that's not the path that I want to go on. And my family, if they're happy, I will never push things on them or share, things that I've learned about the church. If they're happy, I'm happy for them, but let me be happy too. But they know that their family's not eternal as it should be because I'm not part of that group anymore. So
do they really believe that you're not going to be in heaven with them?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the way that Mormons would believe, if I have walked away from my temple blessings and I've turned my back on it, yeah, I'm as bad as you could possibly be.
Have you ever asked?
My brother sat me down about a year ago. Once I reconnected with my family last September when my sister passed away. And I hadn't even known that my sister was dying of cancer or anything. I wasn't in touch with the family at all for a long time. And my brother sat me down and he said, do you even believe in God? Do you pray? And I was like, I absolutely believe in God. I was baptized Lutheran a few years ago, 10 years ago. And I pray to God every day. I don't crack my Bible open all the time. I go to church maybe every few weeks, every few months. But I'm happy and I know God loves me and I'm not afraid of him. It's been a huge transition for me to change that way. God isn't, I just really think God wants you to be nice, be good to people and be happy and love everything he's given us.
So you don't feel like you're any less than they are?
No, but yet I still have moments where I'm like, oh, am I sinning? What am I doing? I still have to get some of the cobwebs out of my head of some of the things of how I was raised. So, but
how did you find the Lutheran church? How did you decide to choose that one?
At my high school. So I was senior class president of my high school in 1990. And at our 20-year high school reunion, I'm standing there with a glass of wine in a red Solo cup. And another Mormon friend of mine was standing across the room with a red Solo cup. We saw each other and we're both like, wait a minute, what? And we hadn't been in touch. So we both knew and we both started talking. And then she said, well, I go to the Lutheran church up the hill. I'm like, I've wanted to go there. And it's a church that has a giant cross on there. And when I was Mormon, I used to see that church and be like, oh, that cross is so horrible, because Mormons didn't a lot believe that the cross was something that we should wear around our neck.
Well, apparently they do now.
Which fine. That's great. I think that's great.
Fine too, but you don't get to erase the fact that you shamed all of us for wearing them. Like I was told I had to take my cross off. Like you don't. Yeah.
When I was trying to be a rebel in high school, in seminary, I wore a cross and they kept telling me to take it off. I'm like, I can leave it on. So that was me trying to be a rebel. But my friend at our high school reunion, she says, well, come to that church with me. And so I went and started taking classes and lessons. And my daughter and I became baptized Lutheran more than 10 years ago. And so that's how I identify. But I'm Christian. So I'm not going to hell. I'm not worried about that. So yeah, my family thinks so.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I find that that's maybe one of the hardest things is when you leave the Mormon church is just not having a distaste for all organized religion.
It happens to a lot of people. It does. A lot of people. My ex-husband went very, what is it, when he atheist. And I don't know, we don't talk that much about his personal life anymore, but he went very atheist for a long time. And that happens, that they just say, I'm done with all religion. There's just no way I can do that again.
We haven't really found ours either yet. So I might just start making the drive and go visiting my daughter's church and see how that goes.
But it was so fun. The first time I went to any Lutheran or some Christian concert, and my daughter was with me, and everybody's like raising their hands and I was just like, okay. And it was so fun and freeing. It's so different because the Mormon church, I mean, if you love it, you love it, but it's comparing other churches, like other churches, you're having a great time. It's kind of fun.
It's not quite the same as like in the temple where you're raising your hands above your head. When my daughter was telling me that, she's like, no, we're singing with our hands above our heads. And I was like, that seems oddly familiar. I don't know how I feel about that.
Not even the same.
No. I was like,
you want a veil on your face and you're not doing.
You're not in a circle chanting and doing the motions in what's it called? Like synchronized.
Crazy stuff. Jump in on this one. So this guy that I was dating here in Florida a couple of years ago, he was a Mason, and not the top, but the second top highest Mason. And I reached out and I shook his hand and gave him the temple handshakes. And he was like, how do you know those? Well, because they're Mason signals. They're Mason hand signals too. And it was just funny because I knew all of the handshakes, and he was shocked. Yeah.
No, they are. And I actually saw my son greet one of his fraternity brothers with a handshake. And it was the same one of the same handshakes that we do in the temple.
It's out.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, Joseph Smith totally ripped these off from the Masons. And it's, even though we're not supposed to talk about it, it's not that secretive because a lot of people use it. So
you can go on YouTube and see temple ceremony videos.
So you weren't really allowed to have a steady boyfriend or anything when you were in high school?
No. You could go on dates with boys. I never had a steady boyfriend in high school. And there was like a friend of mine. I wanted to go to a movie with a friend of mine, and he was he eventually became a Catholic priest, but he was a good friend of mine. We just want to go to a movie. And my mom was like, is he Mormon? And I was like, no. I was like a senior in high school, but my mom still controlled kind of who we were hanging out with. I said, no, but he's taking the missionary lessons. So he's probably going to get baptized. And she was like, oh, go have a great time.
And that wasn't true.
I had to lie to my mom. No, he was not taking the missionary discussion. We just got to a movie, and I had to get the okay. And that was the only way that she was okay with me hanging out with some guy, was that even though he wasn't Mormon, he was going to take the lessons, or he was taking the lessons.
Did you think that was strange that you could only be friends with Mormons and go on dates with Mormons? Did you think that
you could never date a non-Mormon? Oh, that was horrible. Yeah. And you had to wait till you were 16. And one boy asked me out before I was 16, and I did the right thing by saying no, but it's all I knew, right? I didn't realize I was being so controlled and monitored until I left. I was like, wow, that's a lot,
Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's basically every aspect. So did you feel like it was really hard then to shift, because you really can't date until you're 16? And then at 16, technically you're really only supposed to go on group dates. You're not even supposed to go on the same date or go on more than one date with the same boy, right?
And especially can't be alone, because then that's going to lead to problems. So we were. And
then you turn 18, and did you say you went to BYU, Idaho?
It was called Rick's at the time, but yes, BYU, Idaho.
When I went, it just made the shift. It was Rick's the year before, and when I went, it had just become BYU, Idaho.
That's when I was working as a news reporter in Idaho Falls, so I covered that story. Yeah, yep.
I probably watched you then and not even realized it. So did you feel like that was hard to kind of like make that shift to go from, like you really didn't get any sort of dating experience, and now you're 18 and now you're allowed to date,
which was so scary. It was really scary. But I went to Rick's College with my head down, and I did not want to date. I did not want to get married. I was so scared of being newly married and popping out babies and living in a little tiny apartment and being broke, and my husband going to school because he had just been on a 2-year mission. Like, I didn't want what I saw with a lot of my friends and other people. And I said, I am going to get through 2 years, get my associate degree in broadcast journalism, and then maybe I can have some type of a job that would then help pay the bills, even though working isn't always the most ideal thing for Mormon women. But
was it only a 2-year school at the time? Is that why?
It's a 4-year now?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know that. It's
yeah,
been a long
when
time.
I went 4 years. So that must have been why they switched over the name, because it was.
Okay. That would make sense. Yeah. So it was you could only get your associate there. And so I got my degree in broadcast journalism, and I was actually broadcasting journalism student of the year, which was whatever that meant. But it was kind of fun to graduate from Rick's College. And then I went on my mission to that. So I was so happy to leave and not be married. That was so important to me. I just didn't want to do what all my roommates were doing and getting married so young.
But did you write a letter to somebody asking if you could go earlier?
Yes. I wanted to go on my mission sooner. So women at the time could not go until they were 21 because the church wanted you to get married at 18, 19, 20. And so while I was at Rick's College, I wrote a letter to President Benson, and I said, I'm 19. I'm ready to go now. Please let me go on my mission now. And I got a letter back from the church, and they said, sister, it is not time for you to go on your mission. This is your opportunity to try to get married. And if you don't get married, then by the time you're 21, please submit your mission papers and you can go on a mission. I wish I would have saved that letter, but I was very disappointed because I just thought, well, they'll let me go because I'm ready. So I had to wait till I was 21.
Okay, so how do you feel now that they've changed the age?
Well, I think it's because the numbers are dwindling because I don't know all the numbers. I just listen to different podcasts, but also it's a way to keep the young women in the church and to keep them from leaving. Yeah, I think it is. And the changing of the garments, and there's talk that maybe someday they will allow coffee. It's 4:00. I'm drinking my iced coffee, but I love my coffee. It makes me happy. But I think the church is making changes to keep people in it. And I agree with people that say within 5 years, they will allow coffee, because if they're letting us if they're drinking caffeine and all those swig sodas, but I'm wandering off a little bit, but yeah, I think that's for them changing the age. I was like, I thought of that first. That was me 25 years ago. 30 years ago.
And you were told no, but no, I do think that something must have happened, and that is a way for them to get them committed right early on, like get them on mission right away.
So many people are leaving the church after their mission. That's another thing that I'm hearing is that people kind of they go on their mission, they come home and they're like, nope.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, and I had done that too. We're kind of skipping around a little bit. But after my mission, I took the garments off for a short while. I don't remember why, but I did. I remember cutting the symbols out and putting them in the trash and just wanted to be normal. And I wasn't living at my parents' or anything. And so I must have hidden, it's not like I went out to try to dress differently or anything, but for some reason I got back from my mission. I just thought, I don't want to do this. And then I eventually came back, probably only a few months of me being a rebel. So.
Well, and so you also got in trouble when you were at BYU, Idaho. There was something about, right? Where the boys.
Whoa. We got put on probation. Our apartment one summer, we had boys in our living room visiting with us past 10 p.m. or past curfew, which was either 9 or 10.
Well, so if I remember right, it was always an hour before your curfew, the boys had to be out, and vice versa. We couldn't be in the boys' apartment an hour before you had to be home, which I thought was strange because obviously when I was there, it was a 4-year school. And so I was 21 years old and I had a 12 o'clock curfew on the weekend, which is it was very odd for somebody because I was a convert, and then to be told that, because I had lived an entire year on my own without having a curfew. And then my parents didn't give me a curfew my senior year, especially after I turned 18. And so then to go to a church school and have a curfew was something that was really, really hard.
Yes. And we I don't know why we did, but we put a sign in our window that said, "We are sinners. We have been put on probation." And we hung a bra through the window. Like we tried to kind of push. We were just so upset that we got put on probation because somebody tattled on us that we had boys in our living room talking to us. We weren't doing anything wrong. So yeah, the amount of babying and monitoring and yeah. So
Why do you think that you were told on?
well, because people saw us sinning and we needed to be straightened out. I'm sure that they just thought, oh, that is so wrong. There must be something, some sinning must be happening. But even we were already sinning by breaking the rules. So there are just some people that just have to turn you in.
Well, did you notice that kind of continued throughout your adult life?
Yeah. Well, and we are to self-report if we sin. That's another thing. If people don't tell on you, you have to already, or else you feel the guilt if you do something wrong. A lot of guilt. We were raised with a lot of guilt. Right after my mission, I remember sitting in the Taco Bell drive-thru and I was like, why can't I have a Mountain Dew? I've never had a Mountain Dew, but why can't I? And maybe that's what then later led me to take my garments off. I just figured that out. It led me, no.
Did you ever have a caffeinated beverage? And when was the first time you had one? After your mission?
I didn't. At Rick's college, I didn't. And on my mission, I didn't. So, and in high school, I don't think I did. So, sitting in that drive-thru, I was just like, I am not going to hell for having a Mountain Dew. I won't. And so I got a Mountain Dew I've survived. I still don't think I'm going to hell.
No, you're not going to go to hell. I also don't think you're going to go to hell because you're drinking your iced coffee either.
Thank you. Good. So one other funny Rick's college story is in a dating and marriage class, our professor was like, look around the room. Any of you could marry anyone in this room. As long as you are temple worthy, preferably returned missionary, you can have a happy, healthy, beautiful Mormon marriage, beautiful Mormon family and be together forever. If you could marry anyone in this room. And I'm looking around the room going, no, hell no. But and then I heard that it was taught by one of the prophets as well, that they had said something similar to that you could.
Well, how inappropriate was that to be told by a professor? They're supposed to be teaching and they're telling you that you could marry anybody in the room and you could be happy because you're all Mormon and you're all righteous. So absolutely you would have a successful marriage.
Yeah, because all of you will be doing exactly every step of what the church tells you to do. So of course you're going to have a happy marriage. And I just think, no. And that's not what we tried when I got married. We tried to do everything right. And no, you have to find the right fit.
Well, not just that, but like that. Did you feel like that was part of manipulation, part of brainwashing? So not only are you being told this at church, you're also, I don't know if you had the devotionals that we did, but we were required to go to weekly devotionals where we had the president of BYU, which was at the time, it was President Bednar. He was there when I was there, and you had to go into this big auditorium, and it was not optional. Everybody had to go to the devotional, and they were telling you week after week that you needed to get married. And it was brainwashing over and over and over. And I remember being 21 years old and thinking that I was an old maid, that I wasn't married, but I just never found anybody that I wanted to marry. I didn't like them that much. Like
I said, I went with my head down, and then I wanted to go on a mission. I wanted to be old enough and more mature enough. But I also, I'm thinking now and sharing this with you now, 20, 25 years removed from being Mormon and not knowing at the time, like when you're raised in the bubble, that's what you know. I never thought I'm being manipulated because it's what I've always known.
So you said that going through the temple was kind of shocking for you.
I think it is for almost everybody, right? We all say some of the same things. Yeah, I went through the temple to get my endowments when I was 21, maybe a week or so before my mission. My mom took me to pick up the temple garments. And at the time in Pocatello, it was in the mall. Maybe it still is, but it was at, not Desert Book. But anyway, there was a temple garment store. But my mom was with me as I'm picking out the temple garments. And at the time, they had just come out with 2-piece garments. And my mom always wore 1-piece garments.
Really? That was that late of a development?
And I probably went on my mission in 1992.
They
And
were
they,
were they also cap sleeves then too?
we don't know, but my mom, yeah, wore, way past her knees and at least to here. But my mom was encouraging me to get the one piece garments. And I was like, no, I was told that I want the two piece and that two piece. So she and I got in such an argument there that I walked home that day. I said, I want the two piece. This is what I want. And I'm walking home. Like, we had such an argument in the store to buy temple garments because she was trying to force me to wear what she has always worn, because she even thought at the time that that would be an inappropriate garment for me to wear on my mission.
Well, I wonder if that's also happening now with the recent garment changes, probably, because I also wonder if it's like a little bit of jealousy. I'm a little jealous that I'm like, no, you all need to put in the same time that I have to. You have to wear your cap sleeves. You have to wear your t-shirts under your dresses. Okay. That is a rite of passage. You all have to do that. This is not fair. You get
I'm
to
happy for them, but I agree with you. Yeah. But at Thanksgiving, this past Thanksgiving, I asked my mom, and I've only been speaking with my mom again for the first time in almost 10 years in this past year, because my sister died last September, then my dad died in November. And so that kind of brought me back. Thankfully, they wanted me to come back and be around for the funerals and things. But I asked my mom, I said, so what do you think about this new garment change thing? Like, how do you feel? And she says, I don't understand why they would do that. I don't understand the prophets changing the garments. I don't understand. And I said, well, have you seen people in the church wearing the shorter sleeves? And she says, I haven't noticed, but that's all we said. I didn't want to get into more about that, but she's not sure why the church did that. She's very confused, which is interesting.
It's going to be really hard on a lot of members, especially because we as leaders we had to bring t-shirts, right, to leave in our closets to put on these girls if they showed up, or if they brought a non-member, then we were supposed to have them put on a t-shirt.
We dressed so bad because you had to wear, like, if you wanted to wear something, you had to put a t-shirt under it. Yeah, it was so terrible.
Okay, so tell me about the temple. Why you think that it was something that was so shocking?
Just because you're not prepared. You are never taught. You hear about the temple and you want to go there someday, and you sing the songs and you do the whole thing, and you always look at the temple and go, oh, I can't wait to go inside. But then once you go inside and you put on the veil and the apron and all the things, and then you have to learn these things, and that it was it's not like I walked out of there crying saying, what have I got myself into? Because everybody's looking at you like, wasn't that the greatest thing you ever just did? And you're just kind of like, it was beautiful. Okay. And you're just like, but again, I didn't know more, but now I look at it and go, okay, I can see why people see that that's a cult, and why on my mission, people would say, you're in a cult, and slam the door. Now I get it. But also when they did the washing and anointing, and where they touch you, and you just kind of go, okay, you're touching me in a few places on my skin. Okay. I guess they're blessing me so I can have babies.
Were you naked underneath too?
Oh, yeah.
So, and you had a sheet though at that time.
It was kind of an open, it was a cover in the front and the back, and it was open on the sides, but the lady touched you in places and blessed you so you could produce children someday.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't have kids. So there was that. And even my patriarchal blessing said that I would bear 2 children. It said how many children that I would bear 2 children. And I adopted a child, but I could not have children.
And then they tried to tell you that, oh, it's okay. That just means it'll happen in the afterlife.
There's always an answer, or I must have done something wrong to not be able to have children. Maybe God changed his mind because maybe I wasn't worthy to physically bear children.
Were you pulled through the veil by a man?
Yeah, you're always pulled through the veil by a man. Yes.
So who pulled you through?
I don't know the first time if it was maybe my dad, but it was always whoever was on, the person that you knock to, they're the one that pulls you through. So just all the temple workers behind the veil, whoever I was standing there brought me through.
If you're going like before you're married, then the person that you are going to marry is who pulls you through. And that was my first time where I thought, this is very strange, because like this shows me that I'm only able to go through the veil, only able to get to heaven with my husband. and I couldn't get there by myself.
True.
And
And he learned your temple name.
he did, and I didn't get to learn his. And I thought that was very strange to me because I was like, how is it that he knows my name, but I don't get to learn his name? Well, it's because he's going to call me. And that's still the only way that I'm able to get to heaven is through my husband. And I remember thinking that this is not okay. Right when that happened, that's when I started having a very shaky testimony of what was going on in the temple. I had a hard
Maybe you don't understand this. Like when you go through the temple, your very first time, all around the world at all the temples on that day, they have like, so for September 10th of this day, this name will be Claudia. Anybody that gets their endowments, that's, and that was my temple name, is Claudia. So,
mine was Martha. And I remember thinking, it could have been a prettier name.
Yeah. So everybody around the world that day has that name. And so that is the name that your husband is to call you in heaven, but not forever or something. Or when you die, there's something to pull you through the veil when you truly pass away. But yeah, we are then to know our husband's, the husband is also given a temple name as well. I had no idea what his temple name was. Even to this day, I should call him and ask him, what's your temple name? But I'll never forget my temple name. So, but yeah, I didn't enjoy going to the temple. I would try to go, and on our mission, we were able to go at the MTC, but I went to Raleigh, North Carolina. I don't think there was a temple close by. So, but I did my 18-month mission.
And that was interesting too, right? Because you did not want to go there on a mission. Did you want to go somewhere foreign?
I did. So everybody in my family went somewhere foreign, to like Brazil, Japan, Mexico, the Philippines, and everybody in our family went two. But I was the only one that went to a stateside mission. So in the MTC, and I was only there for 2 weeks, but I was in a group of people that were all going to Guam, English speaking. And I just started having a hard time with that. And the mission president, or the MTC president, his name was Tiny Grant, and he was not a tiny guy, this big guy. And when my parents were dropping me off at the MTC, out of the audience, he's like, President Johnston, your daughter's here. You've got a missionary going. And then when my sister went on her mission a few weeks later, Tiny Grant said the same thing. He's like, you're back. So that was cute. But Tiny Grant somehow heard through the grapevine that Sister Johnston was not happy where she was going on her mission. And so he called me into his office and he said, all right, Sister Johnston, you're not happy with where you're going on your mission? Fast and pray. Come back in my office same time tomorrow and tell me where you want to go on your mission. Has anybody ever had that happen before? Because he gave me a chance to change my mission. And so, of course, I fasted and prayed and went back to his office the next day. But I was like, do I want to go to London, England? Do I want to learn Spanish? Because I did want to learn Spanish because I was going to be a news reporter.
And also, to be fair, okay, if you, I didn't grow up in the church, but my husband did. And he said his entire young life, he was basically told that like your mission is going to be so exciting. You're going to go somewhere so fun. It's going to be a great cultural experience, right? And so you are always thinking that you are going to go somewhere kind of exotic or somewhere foreign. You're going to learn a language. It's going to be something that's going to be so great. It's going to put you above everyone else because you're going to come back. Yes, you sacrificed 2 years of your life, but you're going to come back and you're going to know another language. So you're going to have a leg up on a lot of people.
And because I was headed to become a news reporter, news anchor, I wanted to learn Spanish. That really was my goal. But then I just thought, well, I could go anywhere. I could stick with English, I guess, and maybe I go to London, England, or where do I want to go? So, of course, I go back in his office and I'm crying and I say, President Grant, I know that Ezra Taft Benson called me on my mission to Raleigh, North Carolina. So I will not complain about where I'm supposed to go because that's where God wants me to go. And he's like, okay, great. But so, I wonder what would have happened if I did say, I want to go to Mexico City. What would they have done?
Yeah, I wonder, do you feel like it was a test or do you feel like you really had a choice? Or do you think that that's just part of the control, I guess, is to think that you are able to make a decision, but they know that you're going to make that decision.
You know that I'm going to fast and pray and know that the prophet is right. And to, because I remember sitting in church several times in my life, just going, never question the prophet, stick with the prophet, follow the prophet, no matter what happens in your life, just stick with the prophet, the brainwashing. So I do think that he knew what my answer was going to be, that it was going to be, I'm supposed to go where the prophet called me. Like, why would I question the prophet of all people? Right?
Well, yeah, but you did.
You're right. I sure did.
Well, that was kind of like your first, besides the RC Cola, that was the first sign of rebellion for you.
Many more to come.
So you had a companion that went home early, right?
I
You want to
did.
tell them
And if I said her name, everybody would know who her father was, but she came in and everyone's like, ooh, this is so-and-so's daughter. And they placed her with me.
her dad was he a painter? A church?
No, he's an author. He's an
Okay.
author. And so when she came in the mission, everybody's like, ooh, this is so-and-so's daughter. And oh my gosh. And she was a great lady. But she just had a lot of struggles and apparently wanted to ride her bike into oncoming traffic and had feelings for a member of the same sex.
Wanted to kill herself?
She did. Yeah. There was something wrong with her. And she was in the shower.
Did she tell you?
So she was acting very strangely for a while, depression and everything. And she'd only been there a few weeks, maybe. And so she was in the shower and I went to her journal and I opened the last page and it said, today I thought about riding my bicycle into oncoming traffic. And I just went, okay, that's a problem. So contacted the mission president and talked to her about it too. And she went home, which was good. That would have been traumatic and dramatic for her and everybody. So she went home, but she showed up at our mission reunion. But there's a lot of issues with the, being lesbian and having feelings and things. And it's sad how the church deals with people that have.
Is she an active lesbian?
I've not stayed in touch with her. I actually looked her up a few weeks ago on Facebook to see if I could find anything about her but we didn't really, we sat by each other at our mission reunion a year or two later, but she felt good enough to come to the reunion, which I thought was great. Because not everybody can finish their missions. They just, for some reason. So I'm glad that she felt like she could come to the reunion.
I am so curious. If you do find out what happened to her, I need to know because I am so curious. Yeah. How these people that have, that are lesbian and gay and how that they're.
I knew she was starting to have feelings for a female member in the mission. But I was always with her. So I know, you can't ever, as a missionary, you can never be alone with someone. So I think she just finally just said, I can't do this. Very interesting times. But my mission was fun. I loved it. And it was a cultural shock going from little Idaho to the Carolinas and eating, going to pig pickings and just eating collard greens and great people. I had such a great time. I loved my mission. And went home after 18 months and really felt like I'd accomplished a lot.
Well, and then when you went home, right, there was a guy that was from your mission, also return mission. It was your mission, right?
He was in my mission. Yep. Yes. Oh my gosh. Soon after I got home, he got home and he was at BYU. And he and I served in the same zones a lot. And he was such a great guy. But he then started writing me these long letters on yellow legal pendants, long letters telling me that he's had revelations, that he's to marry me and telling me how much he loves me and that Moroni has come to him and said that I am to be his eternal companion. Like just push. And I'm like, what? And then he came to visit me in the same hardcore push, no ring or anything. And I had no feelings for him that way. So I went to my institute leadership, who's kind of like a bishop, I guess, but it was a college president over the institute, all the single people. I don't know how to explain institute, but the institute president at Idaho, because I was a student at Idaho State University at the time. So I went to him crying, of course, with these letters. And I'm like, because you are taught that the men that have the priesthood, they know more than you. And that if a man that has the priesthood says, I've had a revelation, just like Joseph Smith or someone or the prophet, then this should be taken as truth. That's how I was raised. Maybe some people go, well, you should be able to think for yourself. Well, that's how I was raised. The men with the priesthood are not to be questioned. And so the institute president read some of the letters and he's like, nope, don't marry him. No, this man, no, you can disregard this. And I was so relieved. Because I was worried that he was going to tell me, this man's had revelation. You're to marry him.
Who did you give that to?
So at Idaho State University, and you have an institute. which
Okay.
it's almost like seminary from high school, but it's like seminary for college students. And it was called the Institute of Religion.
Okay. Do you feel like you would have had a different outcome if he said, if he agreed with that man?
Most likely I would have said, okay, I'm going to figure out how to like this guy, because this is what I was taught, is that I have to marry someone because he said so, the church said so, so I should do it.
Do you feel like this is the first time that you realize that the priesthood can really be weaponized?
Yes. Yeah. Very, very powerful. Yeah.
But you were, you were lucky that this other priesthood member was basically giving you the answer that you wanted. Otherwise, as women, you feel as though you have to take counsel from the priesthood.
And I feel like I'm a pretty strong personality, but yet I still allow the men in the church to rule over, my decisions and some of the things that I wanted to do in my life. But I didn't want to get married at that time. I wanted to finish my degree so I could be a news reporter and a news anchor, and I could help earn money for our family. I wanted to have a certain lifestyle in my life. I never wanted to just
and you were good at it. You were good at it. I mean, I think I just saw on one of your posts, I saw somebody had said, hey, were you on channel such and such news? And you were like, yeah, I was on such and such. And I was like, how many years later? And they still remember your face and remember that you were on TV. So you were somebody that everybody remembered.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And even when I was in the movie Superman last July, the hometown newspaper put me on the front page of the paper and still did an article about me, which was really sweet. So yeah, I did Channel 3 in Pocatello and Idaho Falls, and Channel 6. So for 14 years, it was fun.
Yeah. But that's what's hard is you're basically told as a woman that that's not what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to get married and have a family. And that's essentially what happened to you, right? When you were 24 and you were basically told that you were too old and you needed to sign up for hospice at that point.
Yes, for sure. So I graduated from Idaho State University, and I was then immediately, and I was working for 2 years. As soon as I got home from my mission, I was actually hired as a night side news reporter. So I would go to ISU during the day and get my degree, my bachelor's degree in mass communication. But then I would go straight, even in my third year, I would go to Channel 3 News and I would cover stories, house fires, whatever's going on, and go live at 6 and 10 o'clock at night, and then go to school the next day to continue getting my degree. So by the time I graduated from ISU with my bachelor's degree in communications, I was then promoted to be the main anchor at Channel 3. And I moved to Idaho Falls, where the temple was. But yeah, and then I get called into the singles ward at age 24, because you go to a singles congregation, it's called a ward. And I got called in one Sunday, and they just said, Sister Johnston, you are, that was my maiden name. They said, you are too focused on your career. You're 24, soon to be 25. And the younger women in the ward are looking at you because you live in a cute house, you drive a cute car, and they want to be you, a career woman. And that needs to stop. You need to get married.
That's awful. That is awful.
Yeah. And they said, we want you to start dating Mr. Hobbs. And I just said, who? I didn't even know who.
And this is the entire bishopric is in this meeting.
Yes.
Right.
The bishop, first counselor, second counselor, and the secretary are all sitting in there.
Oh, so 4 men. You have 4 men in there telling you, and you're in there 24 years old by yourself.
Yeah.
Being told, listen, you're sinning. Shame on you. You're not only are you sinning, but you are also pulling all of these other innocent young women away from the path that we are all as a church trying to tell them to follow. And you're a bad example. Even though you've already gone on a mission, you've already gone to a church school, and you've done all the things right. I would assume you probably haven't had premarital sex. The worst thing that you've ever done at this point is drink some Mountain Dew. That's the worst thing you've done.
I did not have alcohol. I had never smoked a cigarette. I was wearing my temple clothes. I was temple worthy. At 24, I was the perfect example of a Mormon woman, except I was not married because I was 24 and too focused on my career. And they said, you should marry him on February 14th, 1997. So soon.
So they gave you a date. They gave
Yep.
you a date for your marriage in this meeting.
And they said, it's on a Friday. It's Valentine's Day. This day's on a Friday. So you only have to ask for that day off and you can be back to work on Monday. And I'm like, okay. And then they, it's so crazy.
The
and they
nerve.
said,
The nerve.
he's going to start visiting you 2 times a week. And we think that this is great. And I was just like, no, okay. All right. Okay. But again, you're taught to not question your leadership and that they know what's best for you. If you want to go to heaven, you have to do the things. And so when I called my ex-husband a few days ago, just to make sure that he agreed with this, I didn't want him coming out after this podcast saying, not true. And he said, you're right. He's like, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but he says, you're right. Because they called him in and said, a few things and told them about me and just said, you could marry a news anchor. And, she comes from a great family and you guys would be a great couple. Both of you return missionaries and all this stuff. And
so how old was he?
He was a year younger than me. So when we got married, I was 25 and he was 24 and he still had 1 or 2 years of school to do because he was 2 years behind because he'd served a mission. I thankfully had a job and was making, enough money for us to survive, and he would get student loans and things. But so we dated and got engaged and got married on Valentine's Day in the Idaho Falls Temple on the day that the church told us to get married. Yeah.
Listen, I can't even imagine this. Like, I'm thinking about this of these 4 men, even before they call you into a meeting and they're like, listen, what are we going to do with Suzanne? She's a problem. She's causing all this havoc. She is giving these girls, these young women, hope that maybe they don't have to be a housewife and they could have a career and maybe not get married. We got to change this. Let's come up with a plan. Who can we have her marry? We're going to set this up. We're going to call her in. We're going to tell her that we had a premonition and this is who she's going to marry. And she's going to do it on Valentine's Day of all places,
right?
Yeah, because it's a romantic day. So let's do it on Valentine's Day. She's going to eat this up. She's going to eat it all up. This is perfect. Can you imagine that they're so proud of themselves?
Yeah. And there's video the night before I get married. I'm on the set at 10 p.m. at night, the night before my marriage. And I'm on the set and my co-anchor, Brad Hudson, goes, and I'm like, good night, everybody. And Brad goes, well, Suzanne's getting married tomorrow. And I'm like, yep. Good night. And then I went to the temple the next morning.
Okay. So then so he was going to visit you twice a week. That was what the bishopric and the executive secretary, they basically,
and I resisted. My ex-husband and I talked about this just the other day, but so I was at JB's Big Boy, like this restaurant, and he came and sat down at the booth and was like, hi, and introduced himself. And I was like, hi, and then I saw him later and he remembers this one that I was doing a news story somewhere and he came up to me there and I kind of resisted, but eventually I just went, this is what they tell me to do. I need to start going on dates with this guy. And we loved each other the best we could. And then we got engaged and he proposed in front of the Idaho Falls Temple where we were going to get married.
Did he also think that was strange though? Like, did he think that was weird?
No, because that's what they tell you. I mean, and maybe this is just an Idaho, Utah thing, or maybe it was just our culture, but if this is what they guide you to do and they recommend things. No, but that's all we knew was that the church leadership and your parents are to guide you to help you have the best success and to have the best life in the church that you possibly could. And when you're in a bubble, that's all you know.
Follow the plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
The plan of happiness. Here it is.
I wouldn't say, but yeah, they say it's a plan of happiness.
That's what they call it. The plan of happiness.
True.
This is what you do. This is the path. Hold to the rod and you will be just fine.
And smile through it all. Yeah. Okay, but I have to tell
what happened with the ring. That's the
ring. Yes. So soon after I got engaged.
You still have the ring? Is that it?
No, this is a ring from my current boyfriend, but we're not engaged or anything. But yes, it's just wanted something sparkly on my hand from my new guy. So, so then he came to me and he showed up at the TV station he wanted to go get the ring cleaned. And then he brought it back and we're sitting in his car. And then he also hands me an envelope. I was like, what's this? And he's like, well, I couldn't pay for the ring completely, so I got a monthly loan for the ring. I mean, the ring was like $2,000, and that's still a lot of money. But he said, so we have monthly payments that are due. So I'm giving you the bill. And I'm like, okay. So I'm supposed to now start making the monthly $76 a month payments on a ring that you bought me. Why are you even showing me this? You deal with that. That is not my problem. And I was so upset that it was $76 a month that I had to pay on the ring. So I went to the jewelry store and I renegotiated the price of my engagement wedding ring and changed the payment and everything. I go walking in there going, and the men at the store were shocked that I was given the bill and that I had to come back in and negotiate the price of the ring. So I got the ring reduced a little bit in a deal to put our wedding photo on the wall of the jewelry store or something. There was some, so.
Well, yeah, because you were on TV.
Yep. Yeah. So it was, our engagement photo of him like kissing the ring, whatever, was in the jewelry store for so many months for free because I asked for a little bit of a discount.
So if you didn't think that the wedding was arranged at this point, you're like, okay, this is for sure an arranged marriage.
At the time, I wasn't thinking it was arranged. I just thought the bishopric was putting us together because they thought I was, you didn't get married. I was a good catch. We were a good fit. But I really only thought of that after I got divorced. Or as we were leaving the Mormon church, we then kind of realized we're like, we can get divorced. After 9 years, we made it 9 years. But, we realized we only got married because the church told us to get married. And that's what made our divorce easy, quick, is that we just we didn't choose each other. The church chose us. So we're not happy. Let's get divorced.
But when you got married, something happened, right? There was your dress. They weren't your dress.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I rented my dress. That's how not into getting married I was. I still loved him, like I said, the best I could, but I didn't want to keep a wedding dress. So I went across the street from the Idaho Falls Temple. There was a place that you could buy or rent a wedding dress. And I was the first person to wear the dress. So the lady named it the Suzanne. But anyway, it was a circle. It wasn't low, but anyways, low, a little bit low in the back and in the front. It just had these little circles. Right. It was like to here.
Like an ascot?
Well, it just was round. I should probably pull it.
Like a doily.
I don't even know. Maybe. But it was low. It was down to here, but you could still wear the garments. It didn't show my garments, but it just was this nice little round scoop in the front and back. It was not immodest, but, while I'm in the temple on Valentine's Day, and it was so busy and my mom was just helping me get ready and it was about time to go into the room, a little old lady, a sister, as you called her, came up to me and she said, Sister Johnston, your dress is not temple worthy. So we're going to ask you to put on this little dickie and tuck it in and that will help you. And it went all the way up to here. It was like a turtleneck, like those things that you could tuck into your clothes to help you be modest. And it was full of pearls, like in a sun.
No.
And they put this on me.
I feel like that's like 17th century.
Oh, it was terrible. Oh, it was awful. And I'm standing there as she's tucking this into my shirt. And I was like, God damn it, Mom, I'm not wearing this. I'm not wearing this. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to do this if I have to wear this. And then I start crying and the sister walked away, but they heard the little commotion of me saying to my mom, I'm not doing this. I'm not wearing this if I have to do this. And then another sister came up to me and she said, Sister Johnston, just go get married. Took it off, threw it down on the ground and walked out. And then at the wedding reception that night, my mom was telling everybody, Susie swore in the temple. Susie swore in the temple. She think it was so funny. She was telling everybody, she said GD in the temple. And I was told when I rented the dress that it was temple worthy. But that was my little drama. And so then I walked into the sealing room to kneel at the altar across from this guy I really knew as best I could, crying. And at first he was like, oh, she must think it's really spiritual. No, I just had a fit in the room. So,
well, and they cover most of it up anyways. Like once you have to put all that stuff on top of your dress. Yeah. You didn't know that. I remember being like, I have to wear this now. Like I had no idea.
Yeah. So in the temple, you already have to cover yourself with all the temple things. So you can't even see your wedding dress. You don't
Yes.
walk down an aisle. There is no photography inside the temple, and I didn't choose who sealed us for time and eternity. There's no flowers. You can't walk in with the bouquet. Like it's just the most sterile. The only photos I have are once we walked outside the temple and Channel 3 News was there. So we have video, but then also people taking photos. But those are the first photos of me being married are, 30 minutes or more after we were sealed and married was that way. And then I'm not trying to speak bad about my mom, but she's just so conservative. But we have this on video is my brand new husband is kissing me on the cheek. And I think we maybe did one quick little kiss. And he's like, well, this is what I got, everybody. This is my wife. Kind of, here she is. And my mom said, okay, you guys can stop kissing now.
Well, and my parents weren't even allowed in because I was a convert. So I was in this building all by myself, right?
Oh, wow.
It's something that's very, very scary. And I think that it would be scarier if you didn't have your parent with you, which I did not. And it was very, very hard to even have to explain to my parents, like, I'm sorry, but yes, like you guys you can't come in because you're not worthy. Like it was really, really hard to have to go through that. And then also I did not realize that you had to wear, so it's like basically like a shawl, like a robe, right?
Sheer white robe.
And it is folded like an accordion, right? And it goes all the way across, and then you tie it on one side, tie it on the other, and it covers your entire dress. Like maybe you can see one shoulder of it, and then you have to wear the green fig leaf that is from Adam and Eve, and you're putting that on. And then you have to put this ugly ass freaking veil on that also ties, by the way. And I thought it was so clever because I was like, I'm not going to tie it under here. I'm going to tie it really cute in a big, huge bow on the side. And I look like a pioneer woman with this freaking, like, this ugly ass veil. And it's not like a cute veil, you guys. I mean, it is like a grandma pioneer veil that is.
And your husband is in this ugly, weird white hat.
Yes. Like, what would you even describe that hat as? I mean,
like a baker's hat.
Like a baker's hat. Thank you. Short. I remember seeing him in it for the first time being like, what in the actual hell did I get myself into? But I felt like it was too late. But I remember him telling me before, he's like, hey, listen, like, this is going to be really strange for you. Nobody prepared me because we're not supposed to talk about the temple, all of those things. Well, yeah, no shit. You don't talk about the temple because if anyone told me about it, I wouldn't have gone in there and done it. Like it took me forever to go back. Like I never, ever memorized any of the words that they say because you're supposed to memorize this crap. And that's like how you're more righteous, right? If you can memorize it. I didn't freaking memorize it because I never went back. I was like, this crap is weird. And I'm definitely not doing the initiatories where they're touching my naked body. I'm not doing that again for dead people so they can go through. No, thank you. Like it was not great. It was honestly one of the worst experiences of my life when it was supposed to be the most exciting day of my life to get married. I remember just thinking, this is really fucked up.
Yeah. Yep. And my sister couldn't be because my sister had somehow sinned and wasn't temple worthy. So my very best friend, my sister, could not be there. My little nieces and nephews couldn't be the flower girls. There was no other family. We chose the biggest room. So we had 50 people in the room. That's all we could have, were 50 people. That's it.
That's so strange. I know. And then and so my sister, she also joined the Mormon church, and she got married a year after because she actually met her husband at our wedding because it was my husband's mission companion. And that's how that goes, right? And then they get married a year later. And so I was at least able to be there for her. And I did give her kind of the play by play, like, because I honestly think that was the next time I had gone to the temple, because it took me that long to and I only went back for her, to be honest. Like, if I really think about it, I went back to be there for her.
You know, and I've thought, if I ever joined the Mormon church, would I ever want to go back in the temple? I'm like, no, not that I would ever go back, but like, I could never be a temple person. So I could never be like the full Mormon. So, but they say the temple is not secret, it's sacred.
It is 100% secret. I mean, you can't change the words. Okay. Like, a leopard never loses its spots kind of a thing. Okay. It's a secret. That is what it is.
Otherwise, if they told us everything, we'd probably be wrong. But it's too late once you've committed to go on a mission. Once you're there and you're about to get married. I haven't heard too many stories of people saying, "Oh no, I can't do it." It's possible. I'm sure it's happened, but not very often.
And you weren't told anything, right? Because even at your reception or something you said, right? Because it was a couple days after you got married and your reception, and you had to ask your sister about sex, right? Do you want to tell about that?
Yeah. I was obviously very sheltered and repressed and everything. I'm 25. So yeah, we got married on a Friday, and then we went up to like West Yellowstone, Montana for a day or two. And then the wedding reception was maybe the following weekend or something. And so my sister knew a little bit more about sex than I had, the one that couldn't go into the temple at the time. And so we're standing in the reception line, or maybe before it starts. And I said to her, a little graphic, but I was like, so Sherry, what do you do with the stuff that comes out? Like, what do you do? And so she had to explain to me what you do, because I didn't know what to do. And my husband really didn't know what to do either. We were both virgins on our wedding night.
Yeah. Did it ever get better?
Well, it's not that the sex was bad. I just didn't know what to do after he came. That was the thing, is I just didn't know how to clean up.
You don't have an orgasm as a female for like ever, because you don't really know, like, you don't know your body. You don't know what to do. Like, no one's taught you any of those things. Like, yes, it's good for them. Like, they get to get off every single time. But for us, like, we're a little bit more complicated than that. And there's nobody teaching us about our bodies, and we're not supposed to masturbate, not supposed to do any of those things. And so then when you get married, you're kind of told that it's supposed to be this amazing thing. And that's why you waited for so long. And I remember kind of being like, is that it?
Yeah. We were both so new and so clueless, you know, and I don't want to say much about our marriage and sex with that, but I will say that I didn't know what good sex was until after I was divorced. And even the first person that I dated after my divorce brought me like a sex toy. And he's like, "You've never used these?" I'm like, "No," you know? So I was like, "Oh, that's pretty amazing. That probably could have saved my marriage. Would have brought a little bit more fun into the bedroom had I known about toys."
And it's not that, because sex isn't bad. But then you're kind of taught.
You're raised that sex is bad. You're told sex is bad. And then all of a sudden it's good.
Well, no, it only has one purpose, and the purpose is to have a baby. I remember being told in the temple when I got my garments that the only time that I take them off is like, she is what she said was the 3 S's. It was like sweat, shower, and sex. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she had told me, like, after you have sex, you need to make sure that you put your garments back on, because the only reason that you are supposed to be having sex is to have babies. And so that's what you're told. You're never told that it's for pleasure, or that it's something that is a good thing or something that's even fun. You're not told any of those things.
And I think that the part of the marriage part was, you know, we didn't choose each other. We tried our marriage as best we could. We tried to love each other and have fun and sex and intimacy as best we could. But also, because you have to cover your body. There's nothing, the freedom isn't there. You can't bring things into the bedroom, or you can't have fun on your own. There's just so much control even after that. And then after me not being able to have a child, then, okay, so we still have sex, but I know I'm not going to get pregnant because I found out that I had endometriosis and I couldn't have children. So then we'll still have sex. Okay, but I'm not going to produce a child from this.
So you wanted to have a baby so bad for years.
We did. Yeah.
And you found a baby dead in a dumpster when you were recording.
Yes. Covering a story, a police officer tipped me off one day in October of 2000, and I was still married at the time. And we knew that at the time that I couldn't have children, but the officer tipped me off that a man collecting aluminum cans in a dumpster had found the body of a baby that had been thrown there maybe the day before. And so my cameraman and I get over to the scene, and it's an alley. There's a yellow dumpster, and you can see them taking the baby that was wrapped in a towel and putting it into the van for an autopsy. And I'm standing there just going, man, I would have taken that baby, because we realized that we were never going to have a baby on our own, and we were considering adoption at the time. So we realized it was a 18-year-old girl who hid her pregnancy from her dad and her brother that she lived with, wore big sweatshirts, and then delivered the baby in the bathtub. And she said the baby didn't even take a breath, but she carried the baby outside and threw it in the dumpster. And, it was a sad little thing. But I then advocated to get a safe haven law in the state of Idaho, because Idaho did not have that law. And if Idaho maybe had that law at the time and the girl knew about it, where she lived just across the way was a fire station. And that law allows newborn babies to be taken to a fire station or a hospital or a police station, different locations, depending on the state. And you can safely hand that baby over. So had that girl gotten prenatal help,
you can hand the baby over, like no questions asked.
Exactly. No questions asked.
What would normally happen in Idaho, like before that law had been passed? Then what would have happened to this 18-year-old?
Well, she made the decision to throw the baby away, although she claims in this case the baby did not live. And if you hide your pregnancy, then that's the thing is, what do you do with the baby? And thousands of babies have died. We don't even know how many babies have died from being thrown in trash cans and left abandoned. We find babies, they hear about it, babies abandoned in subway bathrooms and different places. But you also hear the sad story of babies being thrown in a garbage can, and people hear the baby cry and they rip the bag open and they see a newborn baby. But what you would want to do is you normally go through adoption processes, right? You go to an adoption place and say, I'm pregnant, I'm not going to keep my baby. And then you find a family to adopt the baby. But this girl, because she was hiding her pregnancy, didn't take that route at all and got no prenatal care for her child. So she served a very short time in jail for the unlawful disposal of the body. And that is what I was on Oprah Winfrey about many, many years ago when Oprah had a show, was about my advocating to get that law passed in Idaho and then me adopting a baby from that law.
How do people find out about that? Like these young girls, like how do they find out about the program?
So awareness is really important. And there's just there a lot of states do their own advocacy. It's not a federal or a national law, but there's organizations like the National Safe Haven Alliance.org. Also, I think there are places even popping up in Idaho and elsewhere that are baby safe haven boxes connected to fire stations that you can put the baby in that, and then an alarm goes off and then the firemen know. But it's always no questions asked. So, and then 2 years after I helped advocate to get that law passed, and the governor handed me the pen when he signed it into law at a fire station, a mother in 2003 knew about the law and chose to not keep her newborn baby in Idaho Falls. And then at the time, my then husband and I were on the list to adopt a baby. So the state of Idaho chose us, and my daughter was the 5th safe haven baby in the state of Idaho. Now there's been, I think, over 40 babies surrendered in Idaho under that law.
And do you have to pay? Because normally, like to pay for an adoption, it's a pretty expensive fee, isn't it? Like I know a lot of people that say that it costs a lot of money to adopt.
It can be tens of thousands of dollars.
So is this program more affordable for adopted parents?
Yes. Yeah. And you just get on the adoption list with the state of Idaho or whatever state you're in. And then if they're coordinating with the nonprofit Safe Haven Alliance and different organizations, in Texas, it's called the Baby Moses Law. So depending on the state, most of them are called Safe Haven or something like that. But yeah, so we were
baby in a basket. I love that.
Yeah, I think Texas was the first state to start it, and they call it the Baby Moses Law. And then New York was the second. But according to the National Safe Haven Alliance.org, over 4,500 or maybe 5,000 babies have been saved by the law. And then, so my daughter, her birth mom was working at a McDonald's one morning in July of 2003, went into labor, went to the hospital and said, I'm in labor, but I don't want to keep this baby, but I need you guys to help me deliver this baby. And they were like, whoa. And so then she delivered her, never held this little baby. And then she wrote a note on a hospital pamphlet and just said, please give this baby to the Safe Haven people. And then she walked out of the hospital and said, I'm going on a smoke break. And then she walked out and never came back. But she surrendered the baby. The baby was in a safe place in a hospital. And so they were not going to prosecute her because she safely surrendered the baby under the protection of that law.
So then would normally, if that law hadn't been in place, she could have been persecuted for abandonment?
Yeah.
Is that
if
what
she had left the baby even on the doorstep of the hospital and walked away at a door that maybe nobody would have seen, but even just leaving the baby and walking away, that can be a crime. So that's why under the protection of the law, you can say, I am the mother of this baby. I choose to not keep her. She was born yesterday. Or usually you can surrender the baby within 7 to 30 days, depending on the state. And as long as you hand the baby off, you can give medical questions or not, and you can walk away. But if you abandon the baby in an unsafe place, then yeah, you will most likely be charged with child abandonment, child endangerment, something.
But it sounds like even if it was a safe place, even if she would have went to a hospital and just left, then before that law was in place, she also could have gotten in trouble.
She could have. Yeah. If she didn't leave but if you hand it off to a nurse, that might be something different. But yeah,
it's just basically if they were safe or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you couldn't technically like you see in those Lifetime movies where they go and they put them in a basket or put them in a car seat and just take it to the fire station and knock on the door and run. Then that's something that they
a problem. Yeah. Yeah. You need to hand the baby off to someone or put them in those Safe Haven, those little baby boxes that the alarm then goes off. So yeah.
They have baby boxes?
Yeah. I think even in I know Blackfoot, Idaho has one connected to a fire station, but there is an organization, I think called Baby Boxes or something. And so they are advocating to get those everywhere. So
I've never heard of that.
So they have them in Japan. They're in Asia as well. But yeah. And a little alarm goes off when the baby gets placed in there. So then the firemen know to go to the box, but it gives the mom or the parent protection to open the door. No alarms go off. You lay the baby there, you shut the door. And then once you shut that door and that they know there's a baby in there, it gives the parent enough time to walk away without being found. But if you ever try to come back to get your kid, that's the problem, is that then they can say, oh, wait a minute. So we ended up getting...
I feel like this is something that would be very kind of like high numbers in Utah and Idaho, especially just because of the increased numbers of Mormons, because Mormons are not taught safe sex. They're not taught anything, right?
I had no clue, right? There's an example. Yeah. I had no clue about it.
So even if these kids end up, they have a weak moment and they have sex with their boyfriend or whatever that is, and they didn't know how to have safe sex. They didn't know any of those things. So they didn't know how to prevent a pregnancy. And then they end up getting in a situation like that. And then the shame is so strong and harmful. And so it's like, well, they have no other excuse than to try to hide it. I mean, right?
Yeah. And I was taught, my poor mom, sorry, Mom, if you ever watch this, I hope you don't. But my mom told my sister and I that we could get pregnant sitting in a hot tub. That's what we were taught. And then she said around the same time, yeah, right. Remember that one. So I could never go to my friend's house and sit in a hot tub with boys in the hot tub. And then she told my sister and I that she said, because of the shame of having a child out of wedlock in a Mormon community, in a Mormon family, she said, if either of you girls get pregnant, I will hit you so hard in the stomach, your baby will die. That's what my mom said to scare us into not having sex. And when I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, I said that in the Oxygen or the after show, and the whole audience gasped. That's not nice. Don't say that.
Yeah, don't say that. Don't say that. So what hits you the hardest out of that whole story?
Well, me just standing there at the dumpster, wishing that the young lady had made a better choice, because I would have adopted that child. I would have taken that baby. And my husband and I, at the time, we'd been married 7 years. and we were aching. We were ready for a child. But we had people in our church, our Mormon church congregation, whisper or say to us, "You guys are just too worldly. You know, you live in a little house, you drive cute cars, you're so focused on your careers." The same thing as why I was told to get married, because I was too focused on my career and had a nice life.
Listen,
And
there
now
was there, you could not do anything right.
they had no idea the pain and the tears and the effort that, I had tests, I had surgeries so I could have children, so we did everything we could to have children. And we're not going to share that with total strangers in our ward. They don't need to know what we're going through. But then we would hear people say, "Oh, it's too bad that you guys don't want to have children." It's like, we want to have kids. Mother's Day, every time they pass those flowers around on Mother's Day, every year I'd be like, "Oh, I don't need them because I'm not a mom. Don't hand me the flowers because I'm not a mother." I always felt bad taking and I would cry on Mother's Day because I shouldn't be given these little flowers from the little kids in church because I'm not a mom. I want to be a mom. But for the first few years of my marriage, I didn't want to be a mom. I wanted to get my husband through school, get him his job and focus on, making sure that we had a good career for him as well. And then we could start focusing on having kids. And then when it was our time to start having kids, nothing happened. But my patriarchal blessing promised me a man when I was 16 years old, laid his hands on my head, and it was supposed to be a message from God that I was to bear 2 children, and it didn't happen. So something wrong. I did something wrong to not get that blessing.
I just can't imagine that the shame and the guilt that you felt over something that was completely out of your control.
Yeah.
Did you ever also think oh, maybe it's because I got married too late?
I had done something wrong for me to not have children. I don't know what it was in my life that I did, but yeah, God was not blessing us with kids. But then we adopted Lily, and she's now 22, and it was amazing to be a mom. It felt great to finally have check that off my little Mormon list, but also just, I was ready to be a mom, and it was awesome. But it's crazy. She's 22 years old now. So,
oh, I know. I have one that turns 21 next week, and I don't even know how that happened so quickly. But how do you even advocate for laws? Where do you start? Do you contact the governor directly? How did you even make it happen?
In my area, he's a member of the church as well, but his name was Senator Bart Davis, and he lived just down the road from me. So we contacted him. So as a news reporter, I just went to him and just said, "Hey, can we get this law going in Idaho? Because Idaho does not have this law." So we got the law started and he grabbed the ball and ran with it. And 6 months later, it got passed with flying colors through the House and the Senate in Idaho, and it became a law.
That's amazing. I just can't even imagine how many lives that you have changed.
Mine for sure. Yeah, I'm very grateful. Yeah. Best thing that ever happened to me was that I was able to have our daughter, Lily.
So later you had kind of joined what you called, was it a forum, or you hadn't actually left the church?
Lily was about 2. So we got divorced when in our ninth year of marriage.
Okay.
And when Lily was about 2.5, so we got divorced within 6 months after we left the church. We just went, we're not meant to be together. The church put us together, so let's get divorced. But what happened was Lily was about 2 years old, and one day she crawled off the edge of the bed and landed on her forehead, and kind of her neck tilted back, and she had a concussion. Well, earlier that morning, my then husband and I had an argument, and it was one of the first times we ever said the word divorce. And so we were in contention that morning. So when I called him and I said, "We're in the ambulance headed to the hospital, Lily fell off the bed," it was a very stressful day. He gets there from work and he sees her wheeled in. They start doing an MRI. But normally a man with the priesthood is able to lay his hands on your child or anyone and bless them and give them a priesthood blessing. But we were quite conservative in our ways. And when you are in contention and when you don't have the Spirit with you, you can't do that. And so Brandon was standing there with our daughter, and he says, "I don't have the Spirit. I can't give her a priesthood blessing because of our argument this morning. I am not where I can give you a blessing, or our daughter a blessing." And I agreed. I'm like, "You're right. Oh, yeah. That's serious. That's how hardcore." And so
You were next level.
we wanted the highest kingdom in heaven. Yeah. So then she turned out to be fine, but she had a little concussion and all was well. But later that night, And the next morning, it was, I think that evening, we're sitting in the backyard watching her play, and she's got a little scratch on her nose and her forehead. And it was traumatizing to have your newborn in the hospital. But we were talking about it, and he's like, any other parent could have given their child a blessing or prayed for their child, but I didn't feel like I could. There's something wrong with that. Why am I taught that I can't do that for my own child?
Yeah.
And so he shared that with a friend who then said, well, I got a couple books for you to read. So then we started reading certain books. And after several months of reading books and going on to exmormon.org forum, we decided to leave the church. But the question that I had posed on exmormon.org, we just finally, once you get the internet and you start reading books, but the question I posed on exmormon.org all those years ago, in 2006, I think is when we got divorced, is I said, how many of you would still have married the person you married if it wasn't for the Mormon church? And I had 27 responses back, and every person said, I only married that church person because they were Mormon. There was somebody else I was in love with, but I had to marry a Mormon to keep my family happy, or so I could have a temple marriage. But every person said it was because of the church that they chose that person in their final decision, which I thought was interesting. And so that's what caused him and I to just go, we don't need to stay together. Let's just choose to have 2 happy homes and raise our daughter as best we can. But let's not keep doing this anymore. We don't believe in the church. We've heard, so much information about that. It's just not for us. And if it's for you and you like the Mormon church, go for it. It wasn't for us. So we divorced within weeks. Sold our house, split the custody of our daughter, and moved on. So it was easy, but the church wanted to excommunicate us first. They came to our house
Because of what you said?
So what did we do? We just quit going to church. And then I think we just said, we're not into it.
Just stop going.
Well, we just realized it wasn't for us. After we read enough books, we just said, this is not for us. And so I think that either my then husband or something called the bishop and just said, hey, we're done. We want to be released from our callings. We're out. So then the stake president
reading some books, and you decided that you were like, I don't believe in this anymore.
Yes. After several months of researching, we just went and talking to other people who are also secretly like, this is not for us either. And so then the stake presidency, higher than the bishop, came to our home, because I'm a news anchor at the time. I'm a news reporter. And for, us to leave, that's going to get out in that small community in East Idaho.
It's a public. Yeah.
So they said, well, we want to excommunicate you. And we said, no, we want to leave. You will not excommunicate us. We're going to have our names taken off the records of the church. And so we did have that done. And we left. And my family then just freaked out.
As far as you said that you didn't speak to them, did they just stop speaking to you, or?
I had to be the one to mostly walk away, but they, when my sister told me a few years later, and then I moved to South Carolina after I got divorced, moved away. And I was living with a man. And so my family really had a hard time with that, because I was living in sin, because I wasn't married to this guy. And so there was just a lot of contention that I just said, I need to walk away from this. But when I'd heard that my sister had breast cancer, and then it went from breast cancer to brain tumors, and she was given only a few months to live, I went out to Idaho to see her. And she didn't want me to come to her house. She didn't want me to take care of her boys, to cook food for her. She says, lunch with you is great, but you're going down this path and I'm going down this path. There's no future. I don't need to see you again, type of thing. And it was devastating that she just was, I don't need you in my life because you are so full of sin. And that's not every Mormon family. That's not every Mormon to be that harsh, but she just had a hard line. And so I never saw her again. It was devastating. It was really hard.
I can't even imagine. So then at what point, because you were invited to speak at BYU Idaho, was this after you were excommunicated then? Or
so we were excommunicated, we left the church, but yeah, when we left the church.
You left before. Okay. So you never had to have like that meeting.
I was never going to let them give us a court or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay.
That didn't happen. So yeah, I was working at Channel 6 News in Idaho Falls as the bureau chief and like weekend anchor. And I get a phone call from BYU Idaho.
And this is after you've had your names removed or no?
there was a short time that we were not Mormon and we stayed married, but then we divorced within probably 6 months after we left the church because we just went, we don't need to stay married anymore. But at some point, either newly divorced or almost divorced, BYU Idaho called me up and they said, we would love to have you as a former student here and, as a famous person in East Idaho, we'd love to have you come and speak at our devotional, the big devotional where everybody comes. And I was like, well, I'd love it. And so they gave me the date and they gave me more information. And they're like, okay, we'll get back with you with more details. I'm like, okay. And then about a week later, I get a phone call and they said, hey, one more quick question. What ward are you in and who is your bishop? And I was like, oh, I'm not Mormon anymore. And so I don't really have a bishop anymore. And they went, okay, thanks. And they hung up. And so then I get a phone call maybe the next day and they said, I'm sorry, but we're going to uninvite you to come speak at the devotional. So thank you. And I don't remember much more of the conversation, but I was asked to not speak because I was not Mormon and I'd left the church. So
did you already have everything prepared, what you were going to say?
No, because it was months down the road. It was not something immediate, but I understand they can choose to have whoever they want speak at their devotionals, but it was still pretty surprising that.
Because I'm sure that you weren't going to speak about anything that was going to, cause any harm or be any sort of anti-Mormon or any of those lines.
Just like this, I'm not full of hatred for the Mormon church. I'm grateful for how I was raised. My mission was a great experience. So it's not for me. And if it's for you, great. So I don't remember exactly the topic. I know they just wanted me to talk a little bit about my time at the college and my experiences at News Reporter and obviously some spiritual things. But I didn't even think that I shouldn't speak. I thought, why would they not want me to come speak? That makes a lot of sense to have me come speak. So I think this was after your divorce and you had mentioned that you were kneeling beside your 2-year-old daughter at the time and you were saying a prayer. Do you want to tell about that? Yeah. So right before or as we were divorcing, and you're taught that families are forever. Families can be together forever, but you have to be sealed in the temple. And we, because we adopted Lily. And when we adopted her, so we got her. And then 1 year later, we took her to the temple and sealed her to us. And that was a whole other big fun celebration. The day that we took her to the courthouse and we adopted her legally 1 year after we got her. So when she was 1 year old, and then later that day, we then took her to the temple and sealed her to us across an altar. So I always said we made it legal in the morning and eternal in the afternoon. So and we had a big barbecue and all the fun. So I was kneeling at her bed because we put her in like a queen size bed when she was about 2. And I remember just praying to Heavenly Father and just saying like, I'm worried I'm going to lose her, that she's not going to be mine. I don't want to lose her for eternity if that's really true, but I don't really know how I feel or believe in that. And I really had just a nice little sweet impression that just said, she's not yours anyway. She's mine. And I thought, that's true. She's God's kid. She's not always truly going to be mine, even though it's my job to raise her. She will always be my daughter, but she's a child of God and I'm not losing anything, and it's my job to raise her as best I can and leave all the rest up to God. I don't know all the answers to what's going to happen in heaven. And I don't need to stress about all that. I just want to enjoy my life here on earth and just be a good person and have a lot of fun.
I love that. No, I do feel like we don't really have all of the answers and that's okay. And just like, I just don't believe that we're not going to be with our families, no matter what, no matter if some of us made poor decisions or good decisions, or some of us are better than others. Like, I just don't believe that we're going to be separated. I just don't. It doesn't seem like the heaven that I want to believe in.
And one church I went to, they said, they're like, you're not going to know the other person. You'll never know that you were ever married to them. And I thought, I don't know if I like that.
I don't like that either. Yeah, no.
I would hope that all the effort I put into this earth, that I would still know those people.
So you were separated from your family for 10 years and then you came back. How complicated was that reunion?
In the 10 years that I was away, there was one brief moment that I'd heard that my dad had cancer. Somebody commented on Facebook about, several years ago, Jim Johnston says he has cancer. And so then I called that person and I was living in Las Vegas at the time, and I called that person and said, what? And they said, yeah, your dad's got cancer. So then I reached out to my brother, and the one that I really only ever spoke to. And he says, yeah, dad's got cancer. So then I texted my mom and I said, can I come visit? And she said, you can come on this day during this time. So my daughter and I drove up from Vegas to Pocatello to see my family, took some pictures, and posted about it. And then my mom later said, we didn't appreciate you posting on Facebook about dad having cancer. I was like, you didn't tell me I couldn't. So then it kept me away again, but I would think, why would you not want people to pray for you and all that? So it was kind of a sad thing that she was upset that I posted that I came to see my dad.
Did he not want anybody to know? Or
yes, but he was losing weight like crazy. He was getting so skinny. And one of my friends even sent me a photo of my dad before he knew he had cancer. She said, man, your dad's lost a lot of weight. I'm like, yeah, he sure has. But who knew? Yeah. But anyway, so that caused a little bit of stress for a little while. And then I stayed away again. But then when my sister, Christy, my oldest sister, passed away from a many-year battle of breast cancer, which I didn't know about, I went to her viewing, and I saw family members that I hadn't seen and nieces and nephews I had never seen. And one girl, beautiful girl, I had said, hi, I'm your Aunt Susie. And she says, well, I'm Elizabeth. And I said, well, that's my middle name. And she says, well, I was named after you. I didn't know.
That had crack something open inside you, I'm sure.
It did. Yeah, it did. So it was very sweet. So then my dad then called me on my birthday in November. So my sister died in September. So in November, he called me on my birthday and said, hey, Susie, I've got about a week to live. My cancer is back, because he'd been battling that cancer. So I hopped on the next flight out there and was with him when he passed away. About 5 days later. And, so my first time back in a Mormon church was at my sister's funeral, my dad's funeral. But I am connected to my family again. And I talk to my nieces and nephews on the phone. We FaceTime, and I send birthday cards now. And I'm just trying to be a better aunt. But they're not pushing the church on me, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm not pushing my thoughts about the church on them. And I was out there in Idaho for Thanksgiving and in July. So I'm doing my best to be there, but also, it's sometimes tough because I'm not going to be eternal for them. And I know that makes them sad.
Well, how are you able to have a relationship? Like, do you have any advice for people that have families that have differing views? I even think people that have differing political views, sometimes that's hard, but religion just seems like it's something that's especially hard for family members to be able to coexist. Like, how do you find that peace and to be able to have that relationship?
Yeah. So for me, I don't talk about religion. I respect the religion. Like, when I was there on Sunday, they went to church. They didn't ask me to come with them. And I didn't even pack a dress to go, because I would not have enjoyed myself if I went.
And you didn't go to church?
I thought about going, but my daughter and I decided to go have breakfast at this little cafe with one of my best friends. So we decided no church. But I've wanted to go to that church. It's called Grace Lutheran. It's a great church. So one of these times when I'm back out in Pocatello, I'll stop and visit that church. But I think you just have to just respect each other. And, I'm never going to, like I said, bring up negative things about the church. Although sometimes I'm like, man, if my family knew this or this or this, things that I'm now discovering. There's things about Joseph Smith that I truly didn't know growing up. But once you realize and you hear certain things, you just kind of, to me, I can't do it. I can't stay. I'm happy that I'm connected to my family again, although safely, I don't want to say at a distance, but, I'm grateful that they've asked me to come back and at least be around the family again, and it's comfortable enough. I stayed in my mom's house. That was a big deal. So, although I had to sneak the coffee a little bit. So,
well, and you feel as though they trust you enough to be around their children, that you're not going to be a bad example, because you did grow up in a family that was, they were pretty strict on the fact that you needed to only have relationships, friendships, even with people that were from church. So I would imagine that's got to be extremely hard for them because now you're a non-member to be able to trust you.
Yeah, I think, and they do. Yeah, I try to respect that. So, I brought some games to play and I went through all the cards to make sure there was nothing inappropriate on the game cards, and we cleaned those out. My mom still wants me to cover my shoulders with the old garment look. So I always had to wear long sleeve shirts or shirts that would, as if I was wearing garments. Like my mom is still that strict about that. And one time, it was in July, we went to the park to hear some music being played. And I said, can I just wear my tank top? And she says, no, put your sweater on.
Was this before the garment change?
Just last summer. Yeah, before the garment change. So, but still, but even
technically, she's going to have to be a little lenient this 4th of July.
Yeah, but even in December, I'm in the kitchen cooking and I've got to have long sleeve or cover up jackets, types of things. I could never wear tank tops in her home. So, but I choose to be respectful for that. And people go, you should just wear what you want to wear. And I'm like, I've got to respect my mom. Just give her final happy few years of her life without me trying to cause any more stress in her life.
You don't want to rock the boat, and you're just great.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, you're grateful just to be able to have a relationship with her and with your remaining brothers and sisters. Do you still have sisters, or both? You said you had lost 2 sisters to breast.
Both sisters are gone, so now I'm the only sister. And we have one brother that lives in Utah that has also been away from the family probably since 15 years and has nothing to do with us. So that I have 4 brothers that I'm in touch with right now.
Okay, good. And so you have to have sister-in-laws then at some point that are going to be wearing pink top.
I'm curious to see how they would change, if they would. I don't know. We'll see next summer when I go out there.
So interested to see how you have to keep me updated. I'm so curious.
Yeah, I will.
So if you could talk to the younger version of you, what advice would you give yourself? What would you tell her?
Oh my gosh. But see, I couldn't, I almost want to say, don't get married, but that younger me had to do what I was told. When I was talking to my ex-husband just the other day about this, he said, I wonder how our lives would have turned out if we didn't get married to each other. And I said, well, I know that I would have not stayed in Idaho and moved to the next TV market and the next big market. And I would probably be in New York City right now. I don't know, but that was my goal. And I had a path and a projection, and I was a working mom. As a Mormon, I had a full-time career, adopted a child. I never had those big church callings because I was not still, even after I was married, I was not setting that good Mormon example. I never was Relief Society president, primary president, young ones. I was never those callings. I don't even know if I was a home visiting teacher because I was not the correct Mormon woman. So I'd love to tell myself, don't get married. But I also then think I would never have adopted my daughter, which has been the greatest joy of my life, had I not married. So getting married gave me my daughter.
No, you really, really don't know. And there's lots of single women that adopt, or, they end up, there's lots of different avenues that happens. But yeah, so basically you would tell her to follow her dreams first.
Yeah. Yes. I wish I would have followed my dreams of being an investigative news reporter. I had such a great TV career. I loved it so much. And I felt like I was really good at that. And so that's what I wish I would have done, is you never know what could have happened if I would have made different decisions. But I'm grateful for this bumpy road I've been down. My life has not been perfect. You never get married thinking you're going to get divorced. You never try to have children not thinking you're never going to not have babies. You never do anything thinking it's not going to go the way you want. But I'm so grateful. I have no complaints.
Oh, I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share? Is there anything else that you want to shed light on?
Well, so much, but I'm so grateful, and I'm overlooking, it's getting dark, as you can tell here.
I know. I've watched it go from light to dark.
So it's dark here in Florida, but it's so fun that even though my little bumpy life, my bumpy road life, but now I live in Florida and I can be at the beach in 5 minutes. And so no complaints, very, very grateful. And I still love God. And I love the adventures that life brings you and the connections that you make just through social media and different people. So I'm grateful that I've met you as well. So thank you for letting me share my story for the very first time.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm glad that you let me do it. I feel absolutely honored. It's really been a privilege. And you are such a beautiful person, inside and out, Mormon or not Mormon. Really, I mean, you're just an incredible inspiration to so many people. And I'm sure that you probably made more of an impact on those younger women than you really knew, just by having a career and showing that you could be a working mom and also be Mormon. You probably have no idea how many lives that you actually did touch. But my biggest thing is that I think that these young girls that are growing up thinking that their only duty is to be a mom, I feel like that is something that is so crippling because, like, I cannot tell you how many people that have reached out and said, you know, they didn't have an education, didn't have a career. And then they ended up getting a divorce because their husband either cheated on them or just did not treat them well, or they felt like they were stuck and they couldn't leave. I have young women that are messaging me that say that they are trapped in loveless marriages with husbands that they're pretty sure are gay, or they're pretty sure are having an affair on them, but there's nothing they can do. They can't leave because they have no job, no education. They have no way to provide for themselves. And I look at you and think, like, you are such an inspiration to all of those younger women. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like, the Mormon church that is terrible, but also that, like, we have to know that, like, we have more value as women and that we can still be in the Mormon faith. We can still have that religion and still be able to have an education and have a career and be a mom. Lots of people do it. And these kids are all turning out just as incredible, even without a mom at home. And also that we need to be able to protect ourselves and be able to have a sense of self-worth.
Like, that's important. Yeah. I still always have to remind myself that I am valuable and that I'm worth something, because sometimes we've been knocked down so much. So it's really important that we do have good, strong self-esteem and love ourselves no matter what we've been through or anything. We don't have to live that perfect life. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be ours, and we make it our own. So don't let other people tell you how your life should turn out or how it should be. We got to run our own paths. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad to meet you, and I will continue to follow you. I want to know all of the details, especially with this new guy. And I wish you nothing but the most success in your career and your life.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Great to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too. Thanks, Suzanne.
Bye-bye.
Bye.